Call to order the regular session at 6:33 on December 1st, 2024. Let us do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Those attending tonight's meeting should be aware that the meeting is being audio and video recorded by APAC and ASRSD. Any audience members who wish to record any part of the meeting must inform the chairperson, who will announce the recording. This is to comply with the Massachusetts wiretap statute. The listings of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Per the Air Shirley Regional School Committee Policy BEDH, public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the school committee. It is a citizen's opportunity to express an opinion on issues of school committee business. Citizens will have 3 minutes to express their views. Any staff members addressing the committee are reminded of their obligation under state and federal student record laws with respect to maintaining the confidentiality of student record information and refraining from disclosing any personally identifiable information regarding students. Michelle, could we have roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. Okay. So we will go to public comments, which is only going to be in person because of our audios. Do we have anyone here for public comment?
I actually have something.
Sure, you come on up.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Johnson. From Shirley. And I'm here representing the Finance Committee. I'm one of the members. And we had a meeting last week, and I am the liaison for the school committee at the Finance Committee. And we were discussing that we were going to make a formal request. I'm not sure if it's come in yet, but I wanted to come here and sort of announce so that everybody heard the same thing, that if you foresee any budget challenges, it would be nice for this notification to come to the Finance Committee sort of ahead of time before we do the budget reviews in February timeframe. So I just wanted to make that comment. So hopefully you guys can do what you need to and get us the figures ahead of time if you suspect it might be different than what has been in the past.
So I can tell you that there's a standard process that we have to follow through the state. Typically what happens, and anybody feel free to jump in and correct me if I have a misunderstanding from the experience that I have here and my understanding. That's why we typically hold the meetings and the sessions. We have the reports that are being put out here in the public. I know that we're more than happy to work with you. I don't know when Shirley's doing their budgeting, but because we're bound by both towns, that's why we try and have this public time frame to review the information. So not saying no, just want to throw that out there to make sure that we do follow standard process. Does anybody have anything to add? Adam, Charlie, any other school committee members?
Bill.
And Bill. I apologize, Bill, too.
Well, we have our budget presentation to the school committee. I believe it's the end of January, beginning of February.
September 7th we'll start, but I did reach out to the town of Shirley, to Brian and Logan, to get on a select board and hopefully joint finance committee meeting where they could discuss the budget. And Logan had just commented that meeting hadn't been scheduled, and he would get back to me.
Okay, that sounds good.
Awesome.
We'll do our best to get you some preliminary numbers as soon as we can. Some difficulties with that is the state. We won't have any numbers from the state on January 22nd. That's part of the challenge. And then the other challenge is this is a negotiation year with the teachers union. So we will be negotiating a new contract. So it will be difficult to get you very accurate numbers till we have decided on a contract and a salary increase.
Okay, so the state budget
Is January
22nd. And then the negotiations with the contract happen after
We
that?
have our first meeting next week.
Oh.
And we're actually going to ask if there's any select board or FinCom members that would, for both Aaron and Shirley, that would like to observe. We were originally going to ask if anyone was interested to participate, but there were some issues with that. But observers are allowed. I think it would be very beneficial to have a FinCom or a select board member observe and see the process and really get the rationale of why the teachers asked for what they asked for. It's illuminating. So I'll send out something formal tomorrow to both.
So that meeting has
if you would like that.
scheduled, right?
The first meeting hasn't happened. I believe it's December 9th. I'm not looking at Dr. Pataki, yes, December 9th. So I think what we would do is really invite you to come after that first meeting. That first meeting really is going to be logistics. We'll review the ground rules, we'll set the dates for the future meetings. There won't be much meat there, but the following meetings there really will be. And so we'll get you that communication, both Shirley and Aaron, tomorrow. I was planning on sending that out this week.
And is the following meeting probably a week later?
They're usually pretty quick. Yeah.
So could be less than a week.
Well, it won't be less than a week, but it could be the following week. It all depends on when the teachers are available. It's easier for us to make ourselves available after school than it is the teachers. So I would hate to give you a date for the second meeting and then have to change that. But as soon as we have those, we'll share those out.
And do you know if they would be, you said it wouldn't be during school hours, so it'd be after 3 o'clock or something like that?
Usually 3:30 to 5 roughly is what they would probably be, something like that.
And is there an opportunity for a Zoom, or is it just in person?
No, it's negotiations.
Right, the negotiations.
So we can't
No,
broadcast.
it's not going to be a Zoom.
So it's going to be in person?
Yeah, it'll be in person. But also, conversely, we can open up the door. I'm really glad that we have you guys here as, liaisons. So if there's concerns that, Shirley has, we have Adam, we have Chris, where you could disclose your concerns or anything centering around that. Because it sounds like, you're looking for that time frame, but if that time frame is kind of constraining against maybe some other concerns you have going on, feel free to, communicate. And then we'll be more than happy to see if we can help.
Well, to answer your question, like many times, the decision on when to have the next meeting is part of the beginning of negotiations. It's not necessarily set up initially. It can be, but it could be changed too, so.
I just was curious what the normal cadence is.
There is none.
Oh.
It's negotiations.
So we can do step by step.
The time frame is pretty typical, right around 3:30 start, about an hour and a half.
Okay.
No, you're good.
And do they typically happen in this building?
Last time, most of the meetings happened at Laura White, and I think it will depend on really the makeup of who is on the committee for teachers and what is going to be most convenient for them. So if we have many people from Laura White in the meeting, it's going to make sense to have it at Laura White because we can get started the earliest. If there's more high school people, it makes sense to have it here.
And then what usually is contract signing, approvals and signing? Is it January or not until April?
The union has said they would love to have a handshake agreement sometime in January. That's very quick. I'm very optimistic that we can make that happen, right, Dr. Patty? But then it would need to be ratified by their members, and I'm not sure of exactly the timeline on that. So I'm hoping, I would love to have a handshake agreement sometime in January with the teachers union. But the ratification of it, I couldn't tell you that at this point. And hopefully it would be ratified, and that would speed up the process. But negotiations throughout the state have been difficult the last
That's what I
couple of
thought.
years. It's more difficult this year so far than last, even with moving. So we'll see. We have a great working relationship with our teachers union, and what we want is aligned. So I'm hoping it'll be a quick process, but we shall see.
Okay. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk and get some of this going for the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and apologies for my delay. I thought I was early, but I was sitting in the middle school parking lot on the phone and then walked into an empty room. Where are we in the agenda? Have we gotten to public comment?
Public comment.
All right,
Time.
perfect. All right, then let's move on. We have a consent agenda, which includes minutes for release, 3 donations, and payroll and AP warrants. Any corrections, comments, or questions about the consent agenda? Yep.
I just wanted to, I was reading a really nice note from Marianne Zyman. She's a family that donated $500 for field trips, and she just remembered as a kid going on field trips, it's a big deal. And I guess how it happens here, it happens anywhere. If you have the right group of parents and the great teachers, and they set stuff that just sort of like kind of goes on its own, which is okay. But I wanted, and certainly no decision here, but I'd like all of us to think maybe we should, because I think it is an important thing. I think it broadens their world, and maybe we should somehow codify trips to guarantee that students in their time at Air Shirley will have the opportunity to go on so many trips. It's just, clearly I'm at the formation stages here, I don't have anything in front of you, but if you all would think about that and think if maybe there's something we can do that would kind of guarantee that all the classes would have their opportunity during their career in the schools, because I think when you go back, some of the, not just the Canby Lake stuff, but some of the other stuff, even poking around in ponds and rivers and trails and that sort of stuff, that's what you remember. You know, and I think, I thought it was very well done there. I'm happy to accept the $500, and if everybody just think about that, and we'll see what happens.
We do have field trips in every grade, is that right?
There are field trips in every grade. I would have to check. There are either field trips in every grade or bringing in organizations to do presentations and activities in every grade. I'd have to check on that. Part of the issue or the challenge of field trips now is not the actual field trip, it's the transportation.
Right.
The field trip is just so expensive that we are at the point now where we are trying to equally pass that cost on to parents, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
But if there is an appetite to do something with field trips where it becomes part of the district budget, that's great, but we would have to. Yeah,
we'd have to put it in the budget. Yeah.
Right, and we'd have to, luckily we're close to the rail, so we can lean on them a little bit, right?
Yeah. I have taken a 7th grade class on a field trip using the commuter rail, and the commuters coming home did not appreciate that class.
Timing is everything.
All of a sudden, there's an extra 130 kids on the commuter rail during rush hour.
But they were quiet and well behaved.
Oh, absolutely. And they were all under the age to pay, so. Okay. Any other questions or comments about the
Mr.
consent
Rubric,
agenda?
I think it would be good to read the donations into the
Perfect.
public, please.
I am happy to. So, pleased to see that Hannaford Help Schools donated $365.04. And this is part of the Hannaford Helps Schools program. This went to, I'm trying to see, this went to Page Hilltop. And I'm trying to see if there's anything specific that's being used for.
It's a result of a
Student
partnership.
activities account?
Students' activities.
That could go towards field trips.
It could go towards field trips. All right, and then also to Page Hilltop, we have a donation of $3,500 from Global Energy. This is a result of a partnership with All Town Fresh, and we want to acknowledge Jacqueline Harrison's commitment to the Page Hilltop School. Thank you, Ms. Harrington and All Town Fresh. And let me keep scrolling down, sorry. And then the aforementioned Jeffrey Ziman, thank you for the $500 to be used to cover 4th grade Nature's Classroom field trip for law students. And I should note the letter, it comes from Marianne Ziman, who is Jeffrey's brother-in-law, and he spoke about how much he appreciated field trips as a student. And wondered if we still did it. She mentioned the cost being somewhat cost prohibitive, so very appropriate comment by Mr. Quinty. I think I hit them all.
Yes, you did.
All right. Thanks, Joyce.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, including the payroll warrants, 1070, 1071, AP warrants, and payroll warrant 10 and payroll warrant 10.1.
Seconded?
All right. Any further questions or discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Perfect. I wanted to move chairperson's notes up. I wasn't sure what we would have in terms of public participation. I wanted to just acknowledge we do still have a motion on the floor in terms of the placement of the Panther statue. That's not on the agenda today, partially because I wasn't ready for it. So we will come back to that in the December, I believe it's the 13th meeting.
Or White.
Don't. At the middle school if you want to attend. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because I know there were...
Middle schools.
Yes, at the middle school. So I know there were questions if folks, I don't know that we have folks watching, but if you watch the recording and you want to know why, it's so I could get myself organized before the next meeting. And with that, we're going to move on to new business. And up first is Mr. Bill Plunkett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last meeting, I was asked to bring some budget updates. So in your packet, you have 8A, item 8A, which is the general fund, FY24 general fund and FY25 revolving fund balances. In the top section, we have where we ended up with FY24 budget versus expenditures. We came in under budget at $398,000, and for our revenues, we came over budget $66,000. So this is pending our audit, which is going to be going on pretty soon. It's being scheduled for this month. So we have about $460,000 that potentially for E&D to make transfers to capital stabilization, SPED reserve fund, to the budget to reduce the assessments to the towns or for salaries. So we're very pleased with that, and I'll keep you posted as to how the audit's going. And that's as of June 30th, 2024. As far as the revolving funds are concerned, these are as of 10/31/24, so it's current fiscal year 25. And these are some of our largest funds that we use. Many of them we use in the budget, as in circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is the first one you see in the upper left of this section. We had a beginning balance of $875,000, $494,000 in revenue this year so far, and $368,000 in expenditures. So we have a balance of just over $1 million. And that can be used in the budget. We use it for special education out-of-district tuitions. They're very expensive, and that's a reimbursement from the state based on our prior year's expenditures for special ed tuitions. Capital stabilization, just what it sounds like. It is a revolving fund that we have for any capital projects that we don't want to have to go to the general fund, or we can't go to the general fund for. So we have a balance of $773,000. At this point, we did do the lighting project at the middle school, and there was another piece of it. It eludes me. It might have been the middle school flooring, but we had two projects that we did that totaled $20,000. With that balance of $460,000 from last year, we probably want to consider putting some money into capital stabilization, because that could be up to 5% of our operating budget. SPED reserve fund is for any SPED emergencies we have. The school committee can approve payments out of the SPED reserve fund if we had any litigation or any really extraordinary, like a private residential setting, tuition. We'd be able to access that. Food service, with the universal free lunch, it's amazing. The participation is way up, and we're getting reimbursements and a federal adjustment on top of the reimbursements. So the revenue, the beginning balance was $409,000 at the beginning of this fiscal year 25. Revenue and expenditures. The expenditure is a little bit more than revenue. That's typical in the beginning of the year. Plus, we also have a plumbing project going on in the cafeteria at Page Hilltop, and we tapped into the food service fund for $50,000 worth of that project. That will finish off the whole building onto the new hot water boiler loops. So it'd be all, we had an old steam boiler down in that section, and it was failing, and it was time, it's the end of life for that boiler. So we'll be glad to have all hot water right down through the whole building. So we were able to tap $50,000 into the food service account. The EA shelter is new from last year, with the shelter coming into air. The state was reimbursing us $104 a day per student. I think we had 19 to 24 students at one point. So we were receiving that as a reimbursement quarterly. And we also received some reimbursement for transportation. So we have $291,000 in that revolving fund. And they started their first data collection for the first reimbursement for this year. So we think it's going to be about 23 or 24 students that will be reimbursed for every single day that they've been enrolled with our district.
So that total amount, if a student is enrolled for the 181 days, is almost exactly what we spend per pupil. It comes to just over $18,000. So it is covering the cost of what it would cost us to educate a student coming in.
The next fund is building rental, and with the new field and the auditorium at the high school, we have a lot of groups that are coming in. We've been able to add to this account, and it's been earmarked for equipment and maintenance of the fields, and that includes the baseball, diamond, soccer, everything outside that has to do with the athletic complex. And I'll get to it when I get to athletics, but I think we're going to need to use some of that for one of these other, one of our other departments. So there's just under $200,000 in building rental at this time. School choice in, we cut it really close last year and came in basically with $1 left over. We had to move some salaries out and back into the general fund, but we did that. We have about 20 students, not 20 students, is it 100 students?
About 100.
We're about even, 100 going out, 100 coming in, so we're going to get about $50,000, I'm sorry, $500,000 for choice in. So we use that for salaries. We have about 15 salaries that are in that revolving fund.
And that is a wash, because we're sending $500,000 out for school choice out.
Correct. And the last one here is athletics, and I'm a little concerned about this because really drew down their fund balance to $11,000 to start the year. We had our first round of user fees for the fall season, football, soccer, cross-country, golf. It's usually our biggest sporting season, and we received just over almost $52,000 in user fees. And this could include gates as well. We had the Thanksgiving game and another big game earlier in November too that we got some gate receipts for. But with the expenses of $60,000, we're going to use the fund balance in athletics very quickly. Even though we do have $330,000 budgeted in the general fund for athletics, a lot of that is salaries, and it's already spoken for and encumbered against the general fund. So we would like to ask the school committee if we could tap into the building rental, some of the building rental funds to bridge the gap. We're going to need to look at those user fees. I think we might have shot ourselves in the foot a little bit with the $250 for the first sport, and then you don't pay another user fee for the rest of the year. So I'm going to meet with Steve Kendall and Bob Briggs, and we're going to come up with a proposal for the user fees, because we just can't sustain the amount of expenditures that we have. The programs have really grown, and everything else has gotten more expensive. So we'd like to bridge the gap with building rental and looking at the user fees.
Joyce?
So Bill, does that building rental include all facility rentals? So does it include the field fees that we get from people?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
would it be clearer then maybe if you had another thing that had field rental and then applied that to athletics? See what I'm saying? If you split it.
I can make a
so that it's-
subcategory.
so that it's
I
more-
could make a subset of accounts in building rental just for the fields.
Yeah, so if we
Yes.
say, as we say, if that was from the fields, and then we could put it right into athletics. Does that make sense? It might
Yep.
be weird.
We might need to go beyond that, though, to cover the cost of athletics.
No, I mean, but it's.
But yes, to
but
see it
then-
more
Then
clearly,
you
that
have
makes
the same
perfect sense.
streams together.
Sure.
You know, so, because I would say, let's say that I'm thinking building rental, you know, we rent auditoriums and stuff, and they need maintenance. And maintenance from that usage, you know, so if I'm making it too hard. I'm just like, this stream goes with this stream, and then we can apply it.
Right, we
in a
have-
more direct way.
We have quite a few lines within our building rental account where we will designate it, this is Laura White, building maintenance, it could be security. So we do have that, so I can make a group of accounts that we can use for the field project.
Because I've
for
been
the
kind of
athletic
worried about the auditoriums, you know, because this one was refurbished when we did this. But Laura White now, although we think of it as the middle school, excuse me, as we think of it as the new one, it still has had a lot of use at this point and could use some funds to keep it in good condition and keep it in good usable.
We need new speakers, soundboards, lights,
Yeah, they're talking about
microphones
lights
in both
in that.
in both
in that-
auditoriums.
In that section. So I just think it kind of stays together, and then you're like, well, we took it all and put it in athletics. Well, we had use over here too.
We are going to ask Mr. Kendall to come and present. There'll be a very similar presentation to last year. It'll be a comparison of what we charge as compared to surrounding districts. At $250, it is still, except for the cities that have their athletic fees covered by the state, it is still less than half the cost of most districts. And then if you talk about youth sports and some of these travel teams, I mean, it's a lot of these leagues it costs $1,500 to $3,000 to play baseball. So $250 is an extremely good deal, but we need to figure out a way to get some more revenue for athletics so that we aren't covering as much as we are in the general fund.
I know the plan is to have Steve Kendall come and present. I'm curious, your comment that we shot ourselves in the foot, is it that we collected fees from 99% of students, but 250 only gets us so far? Or is it, we're not collecting after we raise the fees?
We spent almost 150,000 out of the athletic revolving fund last year.
Yeah.
And that was about almost 50,000 per season.
Yeah.
So that's what we need as a steady revenue stream to maintain the program as it is.
Okay.
The cost of transportation, the cost of the officials' fees have gone up. I don't think drastically, but have gone up. Just the overall cost of participating in sports has gone up.
And when we talked about it last time, we had a more aggressive escalation we knew we were looking down the barrel of this, and we decided that we wanted to help out with participation and kind of grow into the bigger fees. But I think we had developed a 3-year expansion of these fees. We decided to short load the front end, but I think, we're going to have to take another look and maybe accelerate what we thought we were going to do based on the numbers we're looking at.
Other questions on the budget? Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, it's great.
So the other thing that affects this, and you touched on a little bit, so when we talk about the SPED reserve fund, and can we have an update sometime about how many kids are going out and how many are in our classes and stuff, so that we see that ratio and see how because studying that, how it changes over time is very interesting, because it's a huge impact, So I know we had people move in and they have kids already out, so there's nothing you can do. But it would just be good to hear from Tara as to...
That would actually be Kristen Campione that would present that. She's the district
Kristen.
coordinator.
Well, just an overall SPED
Yeah.
expenditure
We can do a combo,
study.
have them both come, absolutely. I can give you a little quick update of that now. We had actually made a lot of progress in getting that number down. I believe in 2021, we had about 40 students out of district, maybe a little bit more than that. We got that down to the low 20s. Last year, we had a lot of move-ins of students who were already outplaced, and it's very difficult when a student moves into town already in a placement to bring them back, though we try, if we can provide for their need. But we're back close to 40.
It's just good to keep that at top of list, because it's very impactful on the budget. And so seeing how that goes along and what we can expect, and it only gets worse.
It also has been historically a slide that's been in the budget presentation each year. It shows the number of students who are identified as students with disabilities and those that are placed out of district, and it shows that.
But sometimes it's just good to hear this in piecemeal, because it's hard to absorb the whole thing in the whole budget.
No, I'm saying it's also in there.
Yeah,
That's all.
right.
I'm not saying
Can't repeat it too many
in lieu
times.
of this. Yeah.
It's a big expense, and absolutely. So we will ask Mrs. Wozik and Mrs. Campione to present either at the next meeting or possibly the first in January, depending on their availability.
Bill, can I ask a school finance 101 question that I feel a little embarrassed asking? Apologies, all the caveats. In terms of our budget, where is our money and how much do we, and I'm asking that from I know the organization I work for, it's a nonprofit, we moved our money into high yield savings, which institutions can do. I'm curious, can schools do that? Do we do that? If we have over the course of a year somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to $30 million sort of moving through accounts, that could at 4% be sizable. But I don't know if that's allowed or if we do it or.
We have a $30 million budget, but a lot of that's revolving funds and grants. The general fund, whatever cash balances we have is kept in a sweep account.
Okay.
So it's swept into to a high rate account overnight.
Okay. Yeah.
So that goes right to zero every night, and interest rates have gotten better.
Right.
So the last 18 months, we get about $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
As revenue, interest revenue
Yeah.
on that money every night.
Okay.
I mean, every
Month, yeah.
Every month. That would be great. No problem.
It changes our contract negotiation. Yes, Erica.
So one of the concerns that I have, and it's just kind of forward thinking, and I know that you have such a proactive approach, which I really appreciate, given kind of what we've seen or I'll say because I can't speak for everybody, but what I've seen in the prior years, I know that we have the universal lunch, right? So can you remind me, is that state instituted or is that federally?
Kind of
Or
a
is it both?
combination.
That's what I thought. Because my concern sits under anything that relates to federal, proactively thinking about making sure we're covering ourselves in the event that maybe we lose some money towards that for food services. So would that be something we would want to incorporate in this coming budget to kind of give us a cushion if like in 2026 we end up needing a better starting balance because maybe some kind of monies goes away? How does that work?
So the food service program is like an enterprise fund.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically operating separate from our general fund, and they're having their own revenues and expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
The universal free lunch is a combination of federal and state. The state is trying to get more federal help because they can't sustain this much further. And they have a Community Eligibility Provision Act, which a lot of the gateway cities had already. It's for eligibility for like a direct cert. Like if you're on SNAP or Mass Health, you're automatically certified. If you have a certain percentage, they lowered the percentage. So now districts like us are going to be eligible for that CEP, they call it. And that invokes federal funds. So that's what the state is going to doing to help fund this. So it is a combination, and they are using the CEP as a model to get the federal funding increased.
And then this might be a little out of your scope, so feel free to say it. But for example, the not unique, but wonderful thing about where we are located in the state, we're around a lot of farms, right? So when it comes to zoning laws for grocery stores, when you get into like a zone 1 area or city, in order to assist farmers and low-income families with organic or natural foods, the state has a program already set up so that either overflow or unsold food from farms before it would expire that's still appropriate for grocery stores goes to those zone 1 areas at a lesser cost so that those families can have good food. Given where we're at, I'm wondering if there's a similar program for school districts, or if it has to come through a grant, so that if we do end up finding ourselves in this odd spot or have less, if there's something that we would be able to institute. I mean, I know we have Blood Farm down the road. We have so many farms around us that if we can still provide and maintain, the proper, healthy food, it would be great. But again, I only know that because of farming for grocery stores. I don't know if we have the same setup for schools.
Well, Mr. Ricci, the food service director, has done a great job with reaching out to local produce, like Fairview Orchards, apples, Little Leaf lettuce. They're actually growing their own lettuce. And we've had a grant. We had the Farm to School grant, which it encourages all these types of things. But I'm not sure about the groceries. We do have we're in a collaborative purchasing system for a lot of the food we buy. But I would defer to Mr. Ricci, have him come in and talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
I think it would be a good presentation. It would be brief probably, but he could let you know what we're really utilizing.
He does an amazing job, and I will say that for all of our food service workers, they're all amazing. It's never an issue. When we had the power go out recently at Page Hilltop in the high school, and they didn't miss a beat. If that power, it came back on fairly quickly, but if it didn't, they had a plan, they were gonna be able to serve lunch, we wouldn't have to dismiss. They were able to shift on a dime for us, so thank you to all of our food service people there. Wonderful.
Any other budget questions? All right. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that, and also appreciate you bringing to us proposed salary budget transfers.
So, what item, I think is 8B,
8B.
number 1,
Yep.
is the memo that kind of summarizes the budget transfers. So when we're developing the budget for the next fiscal year, we determine a number that we're going to need, and we get it into the budget in a district-wide salary line. And then we move it to all the individual salary lines once we've got all the new salaries into the system, any new employees into the system, any changes that are made. And then we'll spread that money out between all the salary accounts to cover the increases for the year. So one thing this does is, so it's not going to show a huge, it's in a school committee line, so we don't want to inflate the school committee line with an $868,000 number. That's going to be raising questions about what's going on. So we move it before we prepare the fiscal end-of-year report for the district. So these will be moved, and then our next report will be based on numbers with all the salaries spread out as they should be. So it's a zero net effect to the budget because all the transfers net out between the debits and the credits, and our total operating and capital budget remains the same at $33,424,772. We do need a vote on this because it is a change of the appropriations in the lines. But like I said, it is very important to make sure that we're spreading it around to the cost centers appropriately. And we had budgeted $868,000 for salary increases. While I was looking through the salary lines, we also had $321,000 in salary lines that had positive balances, where we might have made a change where we had one less section of grade 3 or something. So we were able to take another $321,000, add that to the 868 for a total of $1,189,291 in salary budget transfers. And this will be a journal entry that I will do once, if it's approved, to make all those changes, and we will then carry that budget forward. It will show the initial budget, and then it will show the adopted or the budget changes for these transfers.
All right.
So just for fun, would you repeat that number?
Which one? The total of the transfers?
Yeah.
Total number, the dollar amount of the transfers is $1,189,291.
Most of us aren't used to saying 1 million, so it's kind of good to hear it again.
So, and there's a 8B2, which is the actual spreadsheet. It's 3 pages long, but if you scroll to the end, you can see the FY25 budget. The first column, salaries, all of our salaries are 17 million, almost 17.5 for all of our salaries district-wide. And then the revised budget column, all the way to the right, is the exact same. The debits and credits are even, so there's no net effect. And we get the money transferred to the accounts we need it in.
I make a motion that we approve the $1,189,291 in transfers.
Second?
Is that good?
Yep, that's great. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Move along, Adam.
Mr. Chair.
Are you ready to talk about some goals?
If we could go out of order.
Sure.
And first, it will make more sense once you hear the goals that we do the update on the cell phone policy first.
Sure.
That's okay.
All right, we'll move to item 10A.
Great. So I had the pleasure today of meeting with a very small working group, 3 school committee members and then a teacher, Mr. Diffin from the high school, to talk about a proposed cell phone policy. It was an interesting discussion with some discourse. What also had input on this draft policy was a teacher survey and a parent survey. So I'd like to go over just quickly those survey results and then hopefully have a first read of the proposed cell phone policy and answer any questions that you may have. So first we will go through what the teachers had to say. And this will be brief. So how often do you feel cell phone use impacts your students' focus and learning at school? Just about 80% of the teachers felt like that was often or sometimes, and only 9% not at all. And I think it's important to note this was a K-12 teacher survey. So this went from teachers to K-12. And really, the cell phones do not have a major impact in our elementary school. I've heard of 1 cell phone violation this year in both schools. In your opinion, when is cell phone use appropriate for students to use during the school day? We had just over 36% of teachers say during breaks, such as lunch recess or passing, switching from class to class. That was cut off, my apologies. Almost 25% for learning activities as directed by a teacher, and 39% only outside of school hours. So just about 60% had a combination of during breaks or for learning activities. And how would you prefer a cell phone policy to be enforced? And this, for teachers, actually might be the most important one. We had almost 56% a consistent school-wide rules for all students. Where policies go to die is the lack of enforcement on them. So we have a cell phone policy now that would probably be fairly effective if it was enforced. It is not, which is why we're here presenting on a new policy. Then we had a very small percentage teacher discretion on allowing or limiting phone use, and the majority of our teachers, excuse me, not the majority, but almost 38% wanted a combination of very consistent rules that will be enforced and the teachers to have some type of discretion to allow students to use cell phones for educational purposes. And for the parents' cell phones. In your opinion, when is cell phone use appropriate for students during the school day? 55% of students, 55% of parents thought that for learning activities or directed by a teacher was appropriate. 39% said only outside of school. 39% of the respondents also said during breaks. Now, this does not add up to 100 because this was a question that asked them to select all that apply. Okay. There were other responses, but they were about 1%, so I left those out. How do you feel about students using cell phones for educational purposes for the classroom? This is a little all over the place. Just over 8% strongly support, just over 22% support, 26% of the parents were neutral, 20% oppose, and 23.3% strongly oppose. And overall, what are the primary concerns about cell phone use during the day? Select all that apply. Distractions from learning, almost 90% of the parents were concerned about that, and 68.5% are concerned of cyberbullying and inappropriate online behavior. I can tell you that cyberbullying and inappropriate online behavior is my #1 concern with cell phones. Yes, they're a huge distraction from learning. It's a big problem. I want to fix that problem. But if I can fix the cyberbullying and inappropriate online behavior and still have the distractions in learning, I'd take it, to be perfectly honest. And then there was 8% of other responses. There was a hodgepodge of things. And some of them were really reinforcing the distractions from learning or cyberbullying, just using different phrases. So the parents and teachers aren't far off on what they're asking and want to see. So we took this information and went over this today, and then my first shot at this policy and made some minor changes to it. But if you will, I'd be happy to do a first read and then answer any questions on the policy, or any questions on the data.
We do questions on the data, comments on the data? I know 3 of us saw it earlier. Ashley?
Do you just want to address, I know you had mentioned the last meeting, the like surplus responses, that you weren't sure how you were going to figure them out.
Thank
If you
you.
just want to clarify that.
So we had, on the parent survey, we had noticed a huge influx of responses that came in over a couple of days, but it was, they were all the same exact responses, and we had one at 8:01, 8:02, 8:03, 8:04, which led me to believe some students may have gotten their hands on the survey and decided to try to sway it in a certain way, which they can do because we have to turn off the restricting it to a Gmail account, because not all parents have Gmail. I did cut those out and look at the data without it. It didn't change it drastically, so I decided just to keep it in. So there weren't really any complaints about us taking out data to make it look the way we wanted it to look. Thank you for that.
Any other questions, or are we ready to discuss the policy? All right.
Okay, so I'm going to skip the top part because that's really part of parent communication. I'll get right into reading what the policy is. Excuse me. Cell phone and listening device policy for grades 6 through 12. That should actually be for K through 12, because there is an elementary component in this. In the classroom, cell phone and listening devices. Students in grades 6 through 12 will be required to turn off cell phones and listening devices, earbuds and headphones, and place them in a designated container upon entering the classroom. No device will be permitted during class or while in hall pass. Educational use exception. Teachers must request permission from administration for students to use their cell phones or listening devices for specific educational purposes. Approval will be granted on a case-by-case basis to ensure that the device use aligns with instructional goals. During breaks, middle school, grades 6 through 8. Middle school students must keep their phones turned off and are not allowed to use them during passing periods or lunch. However, they may keep their phones on their person, e.g. pockets or backpacks, during passing and lunch. High school, grades 9 through 12. High school students may use their cell phones and listening devices in the hallways, during class changes, and in the cafeteria during their assigned lunch period. Consequences for violations. First offense, the device will be confiscated and returned to the student at the end of the day. Second offense, if there are repeated violation, a parent or a guardian will be required to pick up the phone or listening device at the school. Continued non-compliance may lead to further restrictions, such as the phone being locked in the main office during the day, or restricting the student's ability to bring the device to school. Unauthorized use. Unauthorized use, including taking pictures or videos without permission or engaging in harassing behavior, could lead to more serious consequences. Policy for pre-K through grade 5. For students in pre-K through grade 5, cell phones and listening devices will remain in backpacks throughout the school day. These devices will not be used during the day. Sorry, there was omission there. Ensuring a distraction-free learning environment for our youngest students. Communication with your child. If you need to reach your child during the day, please call the main office. We will ensure they will receive your message promptly, especially in case of an emergency. Thank you for your support and partnership in fostering a focused, supportive learning environment for all students. We look forward to hearing any feedback you have and are confident that this policy will positively impact student well-being and academic success. Questions, concerns?
Looks good to me.
I'd say concisely done, good. Really not a lot of extra words here, it's okay. And I will say, I've already said before, I already have a draconian bias when it comes to cell phones in schools. The difference between the middle school and the high school, I think after we've already got them trained to look, outside of the distraction and the cyberbullying, the rest of that, we want to foster an area where, at least for part of the day, you can just relate on a face-to-face basis, and try to work those types of skills in a unscripted environment, which is going from class to class and sitting in the lunchroom. So I like the policy. I would prefer to see the policy more closely aligned with what you've got for the middle school and continue that on into the high school. Everything else looks, I mean, really very, very well done.
It's as if you were in the room with us this afternoon. That was a big point of discussion.
So can I ask for a point of clarity? Jim, so are you saying to not even have it in passing? Is that what you're saying? To align it that way?
In passing or lunch, right.
So I guess I hear what you're saying. Here's where I diverge off a little bit. Where we're trying to teach, like, Mr. Christie has a phrase for it. I think he uses transferable skills is one of the things that he said. Is that it? Okay.
He does use that.
Okay. So making sure I heard him right. I am listening, Mr. Christie, I promise. So when I'm thinking about transferable skills and I'm looking at sometimes, I'm going to have to use an analogy here. So even as parents, right, we're constantly trying to teach our kids, you know, how to function, how to operate. And there's things that we will not communicate because we know it. We just forget to say it. So we'll assume our children know it because we just forgot to say it. So in a sense, when we're talking about devices for high school specifically, having the ability to have your cell phone near and or around you, and at some point you're able to have access to it, learning how to pinpoint if you have an issue with constantly picking up your phone, being easily distracted, being able to multitask when you're in classes. So for example, I have two siblings. I'm not outing which one it is, but one of my two siblings, she had an IEP, and for her IEP in college, she needed her cell phone to be on, and she was allowed to record her teacher because she needed the recording for the verbal teaching, and then she would have to go back through her notes and then rewrite her notes. So what I'm getting at is there's some skills and some education that I think they're going to need for those devices, because when they get to their colleges, I feel like the professors are going to assume that they're just going to pick it back up. And if we're limiting them for leisure time, or they can only do it at home with their parent, they may miss out on an educational piece that their teacher would have provided to them had they been able to have it in the classroom. Hopefully that articulates, that makes sense to you all, but I think we kind of would do them a little bit of a disservice if they don't have those 4 years to kind of work out how they interact with technology and education in the classroom, where they have an educator present to help them identify some of their shortcomings.
Although in this policy, in the classroom, students will not have access to their device. It will be away, and they will not have access to it. They will have access to that device when they leave the classroom. Mm-hmm. And it says that they will be able to use that device during transitions and when they are in the cafeteria. So it's not necessarily that they'll have the,
Unless I'm misinterpreting this, right? So when we're talking about here, right? So you have the educational use exception here.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, Jim. So maybe I need to take a step back.
The sort of feedback that I think Jim was sharing, and again, was
right.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
is the second bullet under during breaks, where it says high school 9 through 12.
So you're specific to breaks, not the overall policy. I apologize, Jim. I thought you were talking about the overall policy, not just break time.
We also have bullet number 2 there in the classroom, where a teacher could call for something if she felt it was important.
Right. I was being literal as to what I was looking at, because I see how we have the education portion, but I thought the suggestion was overall. So once they pointed out, I get it. So it was just me misreading the document as opposed to, or misunderstanding Jim's conversation and context to it. So I get it now. I'm with you. Sorry.
Mr. Chair, if I may, there is, and I had this in at one point, I'm not sure why it's out, but I'm going to have to add a medical exception on this. There are students who use their cell phones to check their blood sugar levels, so that that will be added for the second grade.
Joyce, are you raising your hand?
Wouldn't that be an extremely unusual situation, and wouldn't that almost fall under anybody who had a hearing problem, or, I mean, not in
That
case the
could-
phones.
that could
That
actually
would
be
be
another-
There's a lot
exactly
of
an
things
example.
there.
That's a great example. There could be students who could use their cell phone as for a hearing.
Or even, I would venture a guess that the definition of a cell phone or personal listening device would include a hearing aid, right? We should make sure that it's called out in this, that students who have those sorts of, right, like that should be accounted for.
But the only reason I'm saying this is because, you know, there is a big push in healthcare to educate children young and implement processes that they're accustomed to. So for example, diabetic patients, they have insulin pumps, and it could be either side. It might not be just diabetes 1, it could be diabetes 2. There's also journaling, food journaling for particular things. Like there's actually quite a few advances when it comes to apps where there would end up being, birth control is another one. There's a birth control where they have to have their phone because they have to press it, blood pressure, alarms, things like that. So even though it seems minute with the various kind of different chronic illnesses that are out now and trying to get people to be more educated when it comes to healthcare, we might find that there's a little bit more percentage of students than we thought regarding that, particularly in high school because they're trying to prepare them for adulthood.
But it would be interesting, and it's really not our purview, but it would be interesting to know what percentage we're talking about.
Yeah.
So if I've got 30 kids in my class, it would, to have more than 1% would be a lot.
Right.
And so the designation of that percentage with the professional is all you need to know.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're just saying the designation of the
Right.
I was thinking of
And
data
it may have to
collection.
go through the office.
Right. So, for instance, you know, in the beginning of the year when we get forms, because I'm kind of thinking a couple steps ahead. So, like, if you're creating a list of students just for, let's say, the principals in the office of students that need to have their devices on them for medical purposes, the easiest data collection point would be at the beginning of the year when we're getting the medical information, because it would be submitted in the diagnosis and then what's taken and medications that they
It would
have.
almost-
You could even put a section in there for like device.
It almost needs to come through the health office.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And it
Absolutely.
would. We
Yeah.
would absolutely
Right.
require medical documentation for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, Adam, your point, like adding that into both the policy and in terms of the communication and implementation, this is something that, again, letting parents know that if their child has a medical exemption.
Right. Parents
that-
who are dealing with severe medical issues for their children do not need added stress about a
Yeah.
cell phone that they may need.
Yeah.
So that's why I would put that right in the communication
Yeah.
in the policy.
Great. Kevin, yeah.
One thought, and this is getting extremely pedantic, I realize, but on the high school grades 9 to 12, the start of the second page where it states that high school students may use their cell phones and listening devices in the hallway during classes and cafeteria during their assigned lunch period. Even though it says it in the next paragraph, you may want to add in accordance to the authorized use, right? Just because students reading that like to challenge authority.
You can add that. Makes sense.
In the spirit of potentially nitpicky, a cell phone is a pretty specific piece of technology. I know that is what we are collecting. I think listening device, I think we imply earbuds or headphones from that. I guess two questions. One, are we planning to, you know, kid has earpods, or are we planning on collecting those? Do those go in the sack or do they stay in the
Let's
backpack?
stay with the cell phones.
We would,
So that's part of my question.
Yeah.
And then I think, is there a, do we want a more expansive, like, again, like saying cell phone listening devices, do we say personal electronic devices? Like, do we, I'm thinking about the kids who like,
Apple Watch.
yeah, and I don't know that we're gonna collect everyone's watches, but like,
Well,
they have like
watches
a-
are in there.
again, if someone has a.
All of a sudden, iPods will come right back into.
Well, that is exactly what I'm thinking about. I know a number of, and this is where you get into the elementary, I know a number of elementary kids, they don't have cell phones, but they do have iPods.
yeah.
You know, and if they're connected to wireless, they can do all the same things. And so just thinking about the way that we define
Yeah.
the
You have to keep it more
technology.
general.
If we have it general, it gives us a little bit more like, no, that is what we mean.
Decision-making.
It's still, I know it when I see it.
That's a very easy change.
Yeah.
We can change it to a personal electronic device.
But I would, to me, I would add it, I'd make very clear cell phone and listening devices and personal
I was gonna say,
electronic.
an umbrella term is peripheral electronic devices, because that includes anything with Bluetooth, anything with Wi-Fi, anything, so that's very clear language, if anybody
Maybe
was
in
to
your
read it.
earrings or whatever.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And Adam, I don't know that I think I had an assumption of what we wanted, and now I realize I don't know. Watches, again, like, are we planning to collect watches? Is that like, that feels like no, but then I'm like, I think kids can do a lot of the things that they're doing with their phones on a watch.
Not this watch.
Mine either, mine barely tells time, but
We can.
yeah, I'm just curious,
We
like,
had asked
what
that
was
question
implied.
to-
I mean,
We had asked that question when we met with the administrators from Yarmouth Public Schools, as well as, that was with school committee. We had talked to some other districts offline, just administrator to administrator. The watches don't seem to be an issue for them. However, we can certainly add it. I mean, our kids are going to try.
yeah, I mean, they're going to do they're going to, and that's where I'm like, if we can get a little bit more general with the term, all of a sudden that's when.
Text.
I think the personal electronic devices would cover, that would
Yeah.
also, or peripheral devices would cover watches, and there's enough room
Just
in those
because it has a
vouchers.
different form doesn't mean it's a different unit.
Sure.
And you could leave it alone until it became
was what
an
I was
issue.
thinking.
Like, not every kid needs to like take off all of their things, but if it becomes an issue, then it goes in the pouch, kind of
It's an
thing.
issue.
Yeah.
But if their phone's off, would it not connect?
No, it'll still.
Some
It'll still-
Register.
5G, they can connect independently.
And if you buy it through your cell phone carrier, it's connecting like a cell phone would. So
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
not with the time.
I had it for my 5-year-old. That's the only reason I
Go ahead, Joyce.
Since it seems to be the concern that Adam mentioned, that harassment, why are we leaving in the hallways?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, this is
The
Jim's
side
question. I mean, this is like
Cafeteria
a,
is bad enough, but at least there's a lot of noise, and, kids are supposed to be getting to another room, not standing there spending 20 minutes.
Sure, so
with
that
their
can
phone.
change.
I just wondered why you left it in there.
Well, ultimately, it's up to the school committee whether that stays in or not. I can tell you the reasoning of when I drafted this why.
Yeah.
The schools that have implemented it, that we talked to, did allow high school to use it in passing and in the cafeteria. And they seem not to have a lot of trouble with implementation. We don't believe implementation at the middle school, even restricting that, is going to be difficult because they don't have access to their phones, or they're not supposed to have access to their phones at all during the day now. So really the only difference for the middle school is that they're turning their device in, so if they happen to go to the bathroom, they don't have their phone with them. Or if they can sneak a text to their group chat saying, everybody go to the bathroom at 1:15, we don't have 5 or 6. This is what happens though.
Yeah, right.
5 or 6 middle school students meeting in the bathroom, or sending Snapchats of teachers or other students during the day when they have that moment to be able to do what they're not supposed to. With the high school, the seniors have had access to their phones for 4 years, the juniors for 3, the sophomores for 2. I think implementation and buying is going to be much tougher for us if they don't have the ability to check that phone at all during the day. Now, part of that is my own selfish desire of having implementation be a bit easier. But I think the other part of that is they're going to have access to their phones in college. They're going to have access to their phones on the job. And part of this is, when is it appropriate to check and use your phone and when is it not? And with a complete ban, I don't know if we're helping with that. But on the opposite side of that, is that our responsibility? I don't know. I mean, this is new territory.
Well, the other discussion that I've heard from people is that, so I get into the hallway, and now I'm not communicating with the other kids in the hallway, I'm on my phone. And that one of the damages of this constant phone attachment is that they're not communicating with the people around them. So if you're sitting in class, do you have, are you necessarily communicating with the people around you in many classes?
Erica and then Kevin.
So that's why. I
So,
was thinking
yes,
that.
I mean, there is a lot of group work and peer interaction in the classes. We have been trying, or teachers have been working towards, and we have been promoting student-focused teaching and learning for some time. That doesn't mean it happens all the time, but the phones certainly get in the way during the class time. Do they get in the way of that, of social interactions in passing and at lunch? They will. But it also gives an outlet for students who don't want to interact in lunch and at recess with other kids. And there are students who would prefer not to.
How
right?
long is the
So-
passing time?
Oh, it's,
3 minutes.
yeah, it's not much.
Which if their phone needs to be off when it goes in the pouch and it needs to be off when it goes back in the next pouch, they've got pretty limited time with the phone going on and off.
30 seconds to boot up a phone, that about right?
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Mine takes about 30 seconds.
I have an old phone
That's
too,
a pretty good phone.
but
I have a brand new one.
Oh,
Kinda-
This is better than mine.
Using that as a jump off point, I think one of the things that coming at it from the student's point of view, we have to remember generationally, these kids have had their phones and electronic devices their entire lives. So to then try and navigate the last 1 to 4 years with this, kind of to me doesn't make any sense. When we're talking about in passing and communication, you're not going to correct social behaviors. We have people who haven't had cell phones for years that are in their 50s and don't know how to socially interact with other people. So I hesitate on doing something like that.
I'm just asking. 'cause
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't seem like-
I'm just like as I'm thinking out loud, because the other point that I commonly am seeing as we're having this conversation that I don't think kind of gets brought up enough is the fact that when you look at the generations of people who are making these decisions for the students, it's almost polar opposites. These kids don't run outside and play. They don't know about when the porch light is on and when your mom's screaming outside, come inside. It's too dangerous to be outside. It is. And I know you're looking at me funny, but how many, look at trafficking. There are teenage girls who can't walk in grocery stores because they're getting picked up off the side of the road. That is a common thing that people have to pay attention to. And yes, it does happen in small towns. It happened in Leominster 2 weeks ago. So we have to remember that the world view and what they're addressing and dealing with now versus what we were when we were their age is vastly different. So I don't want to squeeze them so tightly that we end up, creating an issue for them. I just feel like being able to have the couple of seconds, they're not going to, like, in my mind, if it's 3 minutes, for example, even if it was 5 minutes, most kids are probably going to get out of the class, turn on their phone, look at something that they wanted to look at real quick, shut it off, and go to their next class. I think just in general, unless they're exhibiting some kind of behavior, I think it would be more of an anomaly for them to be doing something negative than just trying to get the piece of information that they need from their phone and shut it off. I just think we, kind of having a balanced approach when we're first implementing, seeing what the reaction is, and then if it needs to be more stringent.
Modify it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Kevin?
Mr. Chair, if I may just
Yeah, sure.
interject, because this is, thank you for that perfect segue. So one of what you hear when I do go over my goals, one of them is the implementation of the cell phone policy. Part of it is collecting the data about how this is going. We're going to view this as a living document for the next 3 quarters of the year. We're going to collect the data. We will report out in April how it's going. We'll have a final report sometime in June and July, and we will make recommendations. If this is the plan that is adopted, we would make recommendations if we think we need to go stricter. One of the options that some schools are going with are yonder pouches. If you're not familiar with that, it's a pouch that, a silicone pouch, students will put their phones in, it locks, it gets unlocked with a magnet. They would actually be able to keep their phone on them but not have access to them during the day. Much of the other parts of the policy would remain the same. One of the reasons, there's a few reasons not to go with that. The pouches can be beaten. All you need is a strong magnet. I don't mind saying that. No students are watching. Plus, they can YouTube that and get that answer in about 15 seconds. But the other part of it is actually, it's quite costly. And we would much rather, speaking fiscally, we would much rather try try and approach, and then if we have to go that route, go that route. And we think, trying it out, getting feedback from parents, students, and teachers about how it worked, and then if we need to go stricter for the start of next year, that's something we can absolutely do. Or if the committee decides to have the same policy for the high school as the sixth grade, we can make that change easy enough for the second read and move forward in that way. But I do feel it would be a much tougher sell and harder implementation, at least at the high school level, if we went to zero use at once. But again, I'm off the hook a little bit here. This is a school committee decision. We're happy to answer any questions or get any additional information that you may need for that. But we will move forward with whatever the wishes of the committee is.
Yep. I just wanted to repeat a comment to your question around why do students have it in passing. Not to speak for Mr. Diffin, but he did also raise there's a policing factor here.
Yeah, right.
And if students are allowed to have the phone, transitioning from class to class, they have it on them. 90% of them are going to be turning it on, and now you're putting teachers in the position of, well, who am I going to nab for having their cell phone on versus not? And everybody's going to be doing it, so how do you police this? If teachers are stopping people, is there some bias involved? Like all of those. So it would be very difficult to
Policing
police.
is always very hard, Kevin.
In the classroom, they have to put it away, right? So that's where hopefully this will be effective. As soon as they have it, if they're going to have it on them, it'll be pretty difficult to
Yeah,
police.
I just think we need to look at it.
And the logistics of taking a phone for an entire day, believe it or not, it's actually pretty difficult, right? So we would, the yonder pouches make it easier, but there's still, at the end of the day, getting to the magnet, to unlock it. Can we make this a duty? If we are making this an additional duty, that would have to be bargained with the teachers union. So, it sounds easy, taking the phone for the day, but the logistics, they don't start the day, they don't end the day where they start the day. So you can't just simply lock them in a case, because we would have kids going all around the school, and that would increase dismissal by some time. Buses have to get to the middle school to pick up middle school kids. So there's all these factors on what would be the easiest to implement. We feel this would probably be the easiest for us to implement, to get buy-in on. But again, we will move forward with whatever the will of the
From the
committee is.
mechanics of this, I understand from a number of other districts that I've been nosy about. They have like, we call them shoe shelves or shoe bags or whatever, and you are assigned, Plunkett has number 1 for first period, Dr. Rinda has number 1 for the second period, and if you put it in that wrong one, it's against the rules.
Yeah.
And you get a detention for that, because you can't follow the rules. Is that the
I don't know if I
mechanics?
would give a detention for a mistake of putting it in the wrong pouch. Maybe if it was
But you never
repeated.
make that mistake again.
Possibly. I think intent matters.
I mean, I know that happened in a school. that's why I
But
read that.
part of the implementation plan, I believe you have a copy of an implementation plan
Oh, I didn't see it, sorry.
in there, but is that in this? Yeah. So we were making an assumption that this might be what we go with. That implementation plan can change if we change this. But there would be, imagine shoe pouches that are numbered, that hold cell phones. Teachers would use their student roster and assign a slot for each cell phone. Teachers would check that at the beginning of the class. Actually, many teachers use that to take attendance. And if there was actually, if slot 3 is Bill Plunkett's slot, and he usually has a cell phone, and that's empty today, that's going to be a call to the main office for us to make a phone call home to parents to confirm that, yep, Bill lost his cell phone because of the grade he got in phys ed. And so that's why it's not there. I'm sorry, that was a low blow.
You know what? Climbing the rope is hard.
Or is it just a student refusing to hand in their phone? So
Well, I think
a lot
part of
this
it was
is
that these things are expensive, and they are their personal property, and therefore it's very serious if you don't put yours where it's supposed to be put. And so it was not just a casual thing, oh, sweetheart, you put it in the wrong place. No, it was like, that is Charlie's expensive cell phone in there, not yours, that type of thing. So it's more than just, oh, it'd be nice if you put it in there. Because
No, it's
there's a
going
lot
to be
of-
enforced. I mean,
Yeah.
and like anything else, when a student makes a mistake, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to figure out why the mistake was made, and if it was something, if the intention was to purposely mislead the teacher, there's going to be consequences. And if it was an honest mistake, you'll get a chance. And if you keep making that honest mistake on a daily basis,
We're
there's
gonna
going
think
to be
it's not an honest
consequences.
mistake.
Yeah, right.
I realize I should sit down there just because I keep looking towards Adam, which means I'm not intentionally ignoring you all. I will say I am, I think, still on the side of it would be great to limit cell phone use during the school day. I think yes, children have had them for a long time. Children also could drink and smoke. We learn things with new technology, right? Like we haven't had technology like this. Most people who build these technologies don't let their kids use them. That says something. And I also know we're implementing this mid-year. It is much easier to go stricter than it is to go back. And so I do want, that is a consideration for, I think, us as well, is what does it mean to implement a policy in January? And have it be dramatically different, right? And so I think that is a consideration for us as well. I would like us to see, and I mean, we can do something, I know, sticking with smoking for a minute, where we see legislature proposing, we just add a year to the minimum age each year, and that's a way to eliminate smoking. Are there things that we think about where the policy in the middle school can become, over time, the high school policy would be something worth looking at, but I don't think students are getting anything in terms of executive functioning skills by getting 90 seconds of screen time transitioning between classrooms. It will probably make those classroom transitions a nightmare in terms of kids getting into the classroom on time. I think there's a case to be made for lunches, but again, I think it is worth us thinking about what this policy looks like both in the near term to roll it out, but then over time, because I don't think the cell phones are doing anyone any good, especially during the school day. And there's enough literature that says that that's true. Charlie, you were the one who brought Anxious Generation to, this is a thing I think we need to be mindful of, and if there's things that we can do to limit, it would behoove us. But I also can empathize with Nate talking about, if we have, 400 kids in the high school? 400 kids moving around at one time, who's the kid that you pull out of the group for having their cell phone on? That's going to be really hard to do, particularly sort of mid-year.
So why don't we, we have to make a couple changes on how we define electronics and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it seems everybody is pretty good with everything else that's in here.
Yeah.
So it looks like the decision really ends up being whether we follow a policy that's close to what's in the middle school or whether we have a split policy. So when we come back for second read, I think that will be the decision we'll have to make at that point.
Yeah. And I believe if we want to implement, Adam, we want to do this in January, coming back from break?
We would like to have the first 2 days to review. We plan on having an orientation for students in December, but we would like to take the first 2 days, which is a Thursday and Friday, to review that again with the middle school and high school students and then implement that Monday. So yes, back from break, but not first day.
Okay, so we need a policy, just again, sort of working backwards. What do we need in terms of parent communication now? Policy approved,
As soon as the policy, I can start. I've already started parent communication. Parents know something is coming. I'm planning on sending something out this week. I will share. I can share this draft that was shared with the school committee, and saying that there are possible changes. As soon as we have an approved policy, I can send that out. And just because we want to start on, I believe that would be the 5th. Just because we want to start on the 5th does not mean we can't start on the 12th.
Sure, and I think implementing in mid-year is hard, having it be sort of that'll be a natural transition. I think trying to do it it's going to start to get real confusing and harder to implement. I'm just saying that so for our group, we are going to need to vote and approve in the upcoming
I was
meeting.
just going to suggest that we accept this as the first read, because we can change something in the second read, like changing the devices definition, because it doesn't really change the whole thing.
I would say as you put it, you'll have the most amount of work as you have to try to do the shell job on this, but if you could start to plot out some stuff, because, I mean, we're doing this like we do why we're here tonight on Tuesday, because we want the best thing for the students in the school, right? And one of the things that are on the plus side when you're talking to high school students is that you get to go up there and explain why we're doing this. What does the science say? What is the current research saying? You know what? We're not doing this because we are worried about, I don't know, radiation on your spleen or something. There are enough studies that are going on that say this is what we're doing, this is what we're trying to accomplish by what you're doing, and then this is the policy. And I think if we, at least when we go to make that presentation, however that works out on whatever we approve, that we'll be able to have a lot of supporting stuff for them so I understand what we're doing. Not that they will agree with it, but at least it will be put in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be part of the presentation too.
Okay.
Middle school, high school students.
Okay.
Do we need to approve a first read, or can we do we just go to the second read?
We just go to second read.
Yeah, we don't need to vote. Yeah. Okay. All right. Adam, feel free to communicate the first draft, and we will look at a second read and approve it
The next meeting.
at the next meeting, even if it takes all night.
Takes all,
Hopefully,
Let's hope not.
yeah. All right, moving back to superintendent goals.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for allowing us to go out of order. So, before I start on the goals, I think I just wanted to mention, I had took a different approach to my goals this year. They're very, very specific, and one fact is focused on one in particular school. But I did want to say, just because the school year ends and kind of reported on the goals, don't mean that those goals go away. There's still a strategic plan, we're still implementing, we're still following that. But I wanted to really have very specific goals this year. One of them, which is the implementation of the cell phone policy, was to take some of the heavy lifting off of the building administration on this, especially because of when we're implementing it. And the other is to just give a lot of assistance to one of the buildings in a specific area where they really need it. So I'll get started with the first goal. And the first goal is the implementation of the cell phone policy. By January 2025, the district will implement a comprehensive cell phone policy restricting students' access to cell phones during the school day. The goal is the goal is to create a learning-focused environment, reduce distractions, and improve student engagement and social interactions. Communications to families has been sent in November, December 2024, outlining the policy and its rationale. So, how is this measurable? We are expecting a 50% reduction in classroom disruptions. So this would be monitored through teacher surveys and disciplinary records. So that's not just office referrals. We are expecting less disruptions that are teacher disruptions. These are disruptions that teachers just deal with and administration never really hear about. From the other districts that we talked to, Gardner, for instance, reported a 70% reduction in office referrals. We're hoping to see that relatively quickly. We do expect an increase in student focus and engagement. We're hoping this leads to a 5% improvement in accountability metrics as measured through classroom observations and student performance data. So for the high school, this would be partly teacher survey, but really MCAS data. And for the middle school, we're going to be looking at MCAS data in our own internal data, which would be iReady. A decrease in school-initiated cyberbullying incidents or misuse of social media during school hours. We're going to track that through student reports. So I say school-initiated. There's no way a cell phone policy is going to stop the nonsense that happens with social media and cyberbullying, but it will greatly reduce the amount of time we deal with this in schools. This is probably issue number one for the middle school and high school. And I won't get into detail, but some of it in, kids believing, I'm going to use Snapchat because that's the one that I think I hate the most. Kids think that they send something and it disappears, but it doesn't. And it gets shared with other students, and it gets very complicated, and it's a huge time suck, and it's a traumatic experience for kids. We will be also measuring student, parent, and staff feedback. We're going to gather this throughout the rest of the school year and evaluate the policy's impact on school climate and student behavior, and make changes as necessary. So is this achievable? Well, we believe it is. There's, Mr. Rupert had mentioned, there is no lack of data supporting that limiting technology or cell phone use with students has positive impact both academically and socially emotionally. We can absolutely put this into action. So in November, we started sharing information with families, and we did provide some research behind that communication. We will share that out with both families, more of that with families and with students when we meet with them for their orientation. Also, to make sure that the policy works and that we have buy-in, staff will be receiving training on how to apply these rules the same way across the school, no exceptions. Classroom A is going to have to implement this the same as Classroom Z. And that will be building and district administration's job to monitor and to enforce that. Our goal is to create a fair and focused learning environment where all students can succeed. So it's absolutely relevant. Limiting cell phone use aligns with our commitments for fostering a safe and focused and engaged learning environment. And it is such an issue that we deal with every day that it will not only help students' academic and social emotional well-being, this is going to help teachers and administrators' social emotional well-being. This is time bound. We started this last year, but really September, November, and now in December, we were communicating with parents. We gathered feedback. I've met with some teachers about this during coffee talks with cabinet. We plan a full implementation in January. The initial review of how it's going will take place in April, and we'll report that out at an April school committee meeting. We will do this again in January, and we will share out the results of this and our recommendations moving forward, probably in June, but possibly that first school committee meeting in August. And then the action steps, a lot of this is repeated of what I just said. So step one, if we're looking at starting now in November, December, that's communication and awareness that this is happening. Parents already know this is on the radar. Again, staff development is next. In December, the student education and policy orientation will take place. And in January, we will have full implementation. Now, this implementation plan does, as you can see, go into more detail. There is a separate implementation plan in your packet that really spells out for teachers what they're going to do and what the expectation will be. I'm happy to go into more detail of that if you would like, or I can answer any questions on this goal.
Ashley?
Just one question. I know you mentioned, not TikTok, but Snapchat, and how, that one's the most difficult. Is there any classes, or I know the high school has RAD training, but I used to teach RAD as an SRO, and I always had like a whole lesson just on Snapchat and how it actually works and how you can get warrants to get those pictures and all that different stuff. Is there anything for the middle school? Because I feel like now it's so much younger that they're having these devices and they're growing up a little bit earlier. So do they have any type of classes, maybe in health or?
There's digital citizenship and technology in the elementary school. Do we have that, Charlie?
Yeah, it's embedded in the computer science curriculum too in the middle school. I'd have to check the health piece to see if it's part of that. I thought it was, but from memory, I'm not going to be able to pull that one up.
I doubt that it's specific to some of Snapchat or some of the other social media, but that getting that specific, especially in the middle school, is a good idea.
I think it might be, and then, or even, because RAD, for the female students, it can be started at 14. And I don't know exactly how old you are in middle school, but
That's 8th grade.
yeah, I think that maybe even if you got that in, you know, at 8th grade, like get the specifics of the apps in 6th, but if they maybe took like a junior version of RAD or something, I think that might be really helpful, because those topics kind of come up.
And I would say Snapchat has been problematic for the current middle schoolers since they were in elementary. I know that, you know, I think my daughter was in 4th grade when she came home. So-and-so took a picture and sent it here, and now I'm a potato. I'm like, you're not a potato. Right? But like, it's silly then. I mean, it still hurts feelings, but that technology is being used in elementary schools, even if we're not seeing the cell phones in the classrooms. And so the earlier we can
or maybe
educate.
on like tablets, those kinds of apps could probably be on there.
They have cell phones.
Is there a
like
junior RADs? Is that a program?
It's not specific, but what I would do personally as an instructor is there's RAD Kids up through age 12, which is an amazing program. I'm trying to get it into the elementary school. But there's RAD Women's, which is 14 and older. But junior, so to speak, like if you were to teach it to the 8th grade, I think you would just have to have an instructor who is sensitive to the age that you were teaching it to. So I would just change some of the terminology or just be, you know, sensitive to those things that you're teaching. But it's the same class that Lindsay Rocco teaches here.
Thank you.
So just an idea.
Yeah.
Erica?
What I was wondering is too, is the sensitive of RAD is too, maybe too sensitive for middle school. Maybe we switch it more to, and forgive me because I'm just trying to, something we all can relate to is like, you know how they'll have like Dateline, or for us it was Scared Straight. I shouldn't roll my eyes when I do that because that's not good. But if we change the content to actually follow a student who was, let's say, I don't know, prosecuted, or the family was sued because of cyberbullying through one of the social media, because then that way we take away maybe an element that may be a little bit controversial for parents, but that's literally what we're talking about, and seeing the steps that are taken on the other side too. So even if we have to switch up the contents a little bit and maybe make it a little bit more palatable for everybody, I think that's still a very good idea.
Well, another point, along those lines is that's actually, I think we talked about this earlier in our working group, it's actually a charge of producing, you know, pornographic material to a minor, and you can be charged when it's a picture of yourself. So I think just those types of, yes, Eric, you could definitely take a different avenue, still get the same impact of understanding that they're actually committing a crime, which will blow like all of their minds. It doesn't seem to make sense, but.
I mean, this would probably be tough for a lot of parents to hear, but if your child has Snapchat, they are probably receiving naked photos of kids their age. And that means there are kids their age sending naked photos. I mean, it is happening. It is something that not only Shirley, every school district in this country is dealing with on a monthly or weekly, some daily basis. So, you know, if for any parents watching, delete the app, block it. Don't let them use it. It's awful, but that is absolutely happening. They are getting these things unsolicited. They are sometimes getting it anonymously. They don't know. It is a very dangerous app. I would suggest for everybody to delete it.
So, within the goals, that feels part of the December student education policy orientation. And I mean, I suppose we'll see it in feedback. I know cell phones are a juicy topic, and I want to make sure to stay within the goals. Any other questions about the first goal before we start talking about co-teaching? All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Just to Ms. Bernard's point, as part of a comprehensive health and wellness framework, there is a section about personal safety in the middle grades. It doesn't specify cell phones, but it does talk about digital safety and some of the pieces. So it is embedded in the new framework to an extent, but it's not super specific.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
So the beginning part of the co-teaching goal, specifically for middle school, I just wanted to go over some of the data of why I picked this goal, middle school co-teaching this year. And I also think it's important to note that Principal Ulrich also has a very similar goal for middle school co-teaching. And Tara Bozick is actually sharing this goal with me as well, the special education director. Our co-teachers at the middle school need some help and support, and we're planning on providing that to them this year. So the performance data of the middle school students with disabilities in grades 6 through 8 has significant areas for improvement in both ELA and mathematics. I'm going to just go over this quickly, but our grade 6 students, only 3% of our students with disabilities met or exceeded expectations on state accountability. In 7th grade, it was only 6%, and 8th grade, 11%. And now on the opposite end of that, 55% of our 6th grade students did not meet expectations. 56% of our 7th grade students did not meet expectations. And 56 of our 8th grade students did not meet expectations. In 6th grade, they had a student growth percentile of 42, which is moderate growth. Grade 7 had a 17 growth percentile, which is low growth. And our grade 8 students had a 50 student growth percentile, which is moderate growth, a slight improvement there. For mathematics, our grade 6 students, only 6% of our grade 6 students met or exceeded expectations. 0% of our 7th grade students met or exceeded expectations, and 0% of our 8th grade students with disabilities met or exceeded expectations. So the opposite end, 41% of our grade 6 students did not meet expectations, 44% of our grade 7 students did not meet expectations, and 33% of our 8th grade students did not meet expectations. 6th grade had a student growth percentile of 45, which is moderate growth. Grade 7 had the same growth actually for both math and ELA. 17, which is low growth, but our 8th grade had a growth percentile of 63, which I actually believe is the top end of moderate growth, not high growth. So it's high moderate. So the goal for the middle school co-teaching is by the end of the school year, all middle school co-teaching teams will consistently implement at least 2 co-teaching models. Some examples of those are parallel teaching, team teaching, station teaching. This will address the current gap where many teams are not utilizing any specific co-teaching strategies, limiting the potential for student success. So we need to just provide some more support, some more training to our co-teaching teams at the middle school of the appropriate co-teaching models that they can use, and we plan on providing that to them. So this is absolutely measurable. We will measure the success of this goal through regular classroom observation, co-teaching check-ins, feedback to both the general educator and the special educator in that room. Observations will be conducted at least twice per term, and we want 85% of our co-teaching pairs consistently using at least two co-teaching models by the end of the school year. Additionally, improvements in student data, specifically the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations. We're hoping to increase that by 10% in meeting or exceeding, and decrease the not meeting by 10%. This will serve as a secondary measure. We believe that this is achievable. We have sent some teams to train the trainer models for co-teaching. This is training now that we can provide in-house. Actually, Tanya Jarrett, the assistant principal at the middle school, has done this training, so she can actually provide the training to the co-teaching with Tara and some other teachers that we have in district. Ms. Jarrett actually has an extensive background in teacher training and PD. She was a literacy coach for much of her career, so we will be leaning on her for a lot of this. We will emphasize training the co-teaching teams in the specific models of co-teaching. I believe, unless we have some new teachers, everyone has been trained in co-teaching, yet they're struggling to implement the models of co-teaching, which is why we're going to focus on those specific models. We're going to find ways to find more collaborative planning time for teachers, and introduce some rubrics and hopefully work with them to come up with a lesson plan template so that they can actually plan for the co-teaching to happen during those lessons. It's absolutely relevant with the data for our students with disabilities. Some of our most marginalized students is concerning in both math and ELA. So improving that implementation model will really help not only with their academic growth, but it will allow for us to individualize their instruction and also better support the diverse needs. So an example of that is co-teaching isn't simply having two teachers in the classroom, one teacher teaching and another teacher kind of bouncing around and helping individual students. That can happen at times, it happens often, but we can have different stations set up where two stations are kids working independently and practicing a skill. The other two stations are each individual teacher, and you're running kids through those stations, and each group of kids has a different need, and we can address that need in a small group in the classroom based on what each individual student needs. Now, that's not going to look like all the students with disabilities in one group shuffling around the classroom. That they're going to be integrated with students who aren't in special education but might have similar needs. Right? That's one. Parallel teaching is another way to do that, where you actually have the same content being taught in different ways by two teachers in the classroom at the same time based on students' need or even how students learn best. So what we're seeing really is teachers kind of struggling on which model they want to use or can use at different times, and that's some of the support that we're looking to provide. So this is absolutely time-bound. By June 2025, we expect that 85% of the middle school co-teaching teams will demonstrate consistent use of at least two of these coaching models. We will have a check-in in January, March, and in May. We will use the data from classroom observations and those check-ins to shift our plan and to really meet the needs of the teachers' needs. So we don't have all of that planned out in this goal because those needs are going to be discovered through the observations and the check-ins, and we will provide what is needed based on that, not just based on what we think. That's the approach we took with doing the overall co-teaching training that we had originally provided, and that absolutely just wasn't enough. So what you're seeing next is it's like the one-page actions cheat sheet. Really, I did go over kind of everything that we will be doing. So specific actions for the co-teaching model, professional development. Mrs. Bozick and I have developed a classroom strategy toolkit that we will be sharing out with those co-teaching teams actually tomorrow, if this is approved. We're looking for ways to provide more collaborative planning time. We're going to be using classroom observations, regular check-ins, and student progress monitoring for our measurable actions and our monitoring progress. The achievable actions for capacity building, co-teaching workshops. That will be a combination of Mrs. Bozick and Mrs. Jarrett and some teachers who attended the Train the Trainer. We plan on providing coaching and mentoring, so pairing some new co-teacher teams with some of our veteran teams. For instance, we have quite a few teams in the elementary and the high school that are having a lot of success with this, and what we would like to do is provide some coverage so teachers can actually leave the middle school and see how it's happening at the high school, but also see how it's happening in the elementary school. There's a lot of really good practice that happens in elementary school that sometimes teachers think, well, I'm not going to do that. That's what happens in the elementary school. It's absolutely relevant and can work. And when you talk about if it's a classroom management issue, no one has better management than elementary school teachers. And we can all take a lesson of that at times, including myself. And then really, the planning seems to be one of the issues that often comes up. So there's a way to do this where you don't necessarily always have to be sitting across from your co-teacher to plan. So that's something that we're going to work with teachers with and hopefully come up with a template that they would like to use And again, this is something that we're hoping to do and that will be a little bit optional because to get them to use a prescribed template with something that we wouldn't have to bargain. But it's something that I have some experience with that I would love to show them because I think it will be really beneficial. Where it is best if you can sit face to face and plan together, but there are times that's not going to be able to happen. And if you can, as the special educator, see the lesson plan or the plans from the teacher and go in and add where you can alter this for co-teaching or even just inclusion at times, it is really beneficial. So yeah, I've gone halfway through it even though I said it was a cheat sheet, so I'll just finish. So it's going to provide data-driven instruction. It's targeting students for their need, and we're going to have regular feedback loops. So time-bound, January will be the first checkpoint, March will be the second, and in May, the last for the year. And we will be sure to report out to school committee at each of these checkpoints. So I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Joyce and then Jen.
So to understand the data that you used here on page 4, that was collected at the beginning of this year?
That's
or
MCAS.
collected at the end of last year?
That's
And
MCAS
therefore,
data.
are the 6th graders now 7th grade, and how does that flow?
That 6th graders are now 7th grade. So that is last year's MCAS data.
So this is the end of last year's evaluation?
It is.
Right? So then would you apply, because you have things that you can is the quantifying going to be looking at the end of the year scores that the kids might have? So like 6th grade becomes 7th and, you have to compare them.
We could. I was, my vision for this would to look at the 6th grade results this year as compared to last year. I was keeping it really with how the state kind of looks at our data, but we could absolutely look at how the 7th graders did
right.
this year as compared to when they were 6th grade.
And how
And
many
we
kids-
do get that. We do get that when we factor in the growth.
And so how many kids are in this sample?
How many
I don't know what to
students?
call it. Students,
There's,
cohort.
in the middle school, about 100.
So there's 100 kids in 6th grade?
About 100, about 22%.
Or is this across the 3 grades? Because these are disability kids.
Well,
so
the 100, around 100, somewhere between 90 and 100, because it's about 22% of our kids.
For the 3,
80? It's 80. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Cleary. That's all 3 grades.
yeah, all 3 grades.
Yeah.
So 3% of 100 would be 3, right? Or do I add these up?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I'm asking.
So there's roughly between 25 and 28 students with disabilities in each 6th, 7th, or 8th grade.
Thank you.
Jim.
That just answered my question.
All right.
I wanted to
Fine,
just
that's-
quantify it so I had some idea what we were looking at here. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'm going to ask a question that I feel like I will stop couching my questions, sorry. Why are goal 2 and 3 different? Right, like ultimately you're focusing on improving the middle school co-teaching model. And there's like the outcomes all fall underneath that umbrella, right? Like, am I reading this right, that there's, are these 2 separate
goals
SMART
here,
goals?
too?
No.
These
so-
are- okay.
No,
These are
first
just
thing
the
that you're seeing is
measurement.
this is why we're doing
Great,
it.
okay. I was
just trying to set the stage of why I am focusing in on one.
perfect. I was
Okay.
still living my trauma of the superintendent eval, and I was imagining the boxes this goes through.
I felt like I
okay.
needed to provide that because I'm really focusing in on one school, and one subgroup in a school, and
So
that's
there's
why.
2 goals here, not 3.
Yes, that's, yes. Perfect. I was like having this moment of like, wait a minute, are these going to be, nope.
I should have clarified that.
No. You just did, that was perfect. Thank you. Joyce.
Sir Chair, I would make a motion that we accept the 24-25 goals as outlined by Dr. Renda tonight for the 24-25 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Kevin's second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We are moving along to 10B, first read of policy FF. Eric. Oh, I skipped to superintendent's report.
That's
Yeah.
okay. If you wanna-
You want to do it now?
Yeah, Adam, keep
It's-
rolling.
It's
Yeah.
actually, it's a quick one tonight. So district updates, the fiscal year 26 budget presentations with Aaron and Shirley. FY 26 budget presentation to the board, select board and finance committee and AIR has been scheduled. We are in the process of scheduling our fiscal year 26 budget presentation to the select board and finance committee and Shirley. We plan to begin budget discussions with the school committee at the January 7th, 2025 meeting. So Tuesday, January 7th, the 2025 budget discussions with the school committee. To be determined, the fiscal year 26 budget presentation to Shirley Select Board and Finance Committee. Tuesday, February 4th at 6 p.m. Fiscal year budget presentation to the AIR Select Board and Finance Committee. We are asking the school committee to change the start time of the Tuesday, February 4th, 2025 at 6:30 meeting, and we propose moving that to 7, just as we did last year, to accommodate our budget presentation at Air Town Hall. So I believe we
That
will need
work?
a vote. No, we don't need a vote for that. Okay. There is a link to the updated budget timeline that will incorporate this information. The sports update, which was submitted by Mr. Kendall, I believe he'll be at the next meeting, so we might ask him for a special update, even though we do this every other meeting, since he will be here. And that's especially for Mrs. Richards. The winter sports season began yesterday. Our football team ended the season with an 18-6 win over Littleton on Thanksgiving Eve. Jake Leone and Lexi Leone competed at the Northeast Regionals for cross country this past Saturday in Boston. And we have a bunch of college acceptances. Appalachian State University, Assumption University, Central Michigan University, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Prescott, Fisher College, Pittsburgh State University, Keene State College, Liberty University, Loyola Chicago University, Metropolitan State University of Denver, Oregon State University, Penn State Beaver, Plymouth State University, Rivier University, Suffolk University, State University of New York at Buffalo, State University of New York at Fredonia, University of Hartford, University of Maine, University of New Haven, University of Oregon, Western Michigan University, Western New England University, Washington State, and Worcester State University. Congratulations to those seniors, and please keep getting these in. We're sending kids all over the country.
Joyce.
I think you have to add on the sports update that not only was the football game awesome, but the band was incredible.
The band was incredible.
And they put on a very, very, very good performance.
And Edgar Allan Poe tributes.
Yeah.
It was great.
Erica.
Just add it to it.
I had a question only because you were coming
Yeah.
in the door, and I want to make sure that I do in correct order. So right before you walked in, I know we had
Elizabeth.
yeah, as the liaison. So she said that there was a formal request coming in, and I know that Adam just put in his report that there's going to be the meeting for the FinCom and oh my gosh, select board for both
Yeah.
towns, right? So I remember saying when she initially put in the request, I think it was, of course, great, but if we already have something on the books, it sounds like we're sticking to that timeline. I just want to make sure that we're in order because it was the first time I was hearing about it, and I want to make sure I'm not overstepping what's already been put in place by the administration.
So the meetings that I had just spoke to are required by law, by the budget process.
Right.
So we are more than happy, if we can, give more preliminary numbers sooner, we will. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility with the state budget coming out on January 22nd and then with negotiations. But I mean, I'm more than happy to call Mr. Sawyer and Mr. Pompion to give them any updates. Mr. Pompion will call us periodically and ask for those. And we're certainly frank with our responses when we can be.
Right.
We're very transparent, we're not trying to hide anything.
Right.
This year in particular, being a bargaining year,
Right.
is going to be very difficult to really have an idea of how much of an impact it's going to have, which is one of the reasons why we want to invite the select board or a FinCom member to come and be an observer. I think it will give a really, when the teachers union starts sharing about local communities and their contract as compared to ours, it's, you have a much better understanding of why they're asking for what they're asking for.
Exactly.
And whether or not they're being unreasonable
Right.
or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was just doing things appropriately, especially with Chris coming in the door, so that we make sure we maintain what we're supposed to be doing and that we're not falling outside the purview of the line. So if we already have our structured outline, I want to make sure that we maintain that. But I just wanted to bring that up, given that it was a little bit different at the beginning of the meeting.
Great. All right, any other? All right.
Oh, that's all for the supervision.
Wonderful. Okay. With that, let's move to naming of facilities.
All right. So I apologize. Oh, geez. I'm sorry.
No,
I
you're
kept, I kept trying to rewrite this in the format of the policies that we have that are already existing, and unfortunately, I just couldn't because my mind just does not work that way. So what I did was essentially outline the key elements here for everybody. So I am going to read the draft policy, and I'll start from the top. So it says, draft policy. This revised policy draft includes recommendations from the previous 2022 school committee meeting discussion and masks recommendations after a policy analysis conducted in 2022. And I also forgot to include that I took on the comment from our last school committee meeting when they were mentioned. And then it says the purpose. This policy outlines the criteria and procedures for naming or dedicating facilities, interior and exterior structures, displays, and their contents within the Air Shirley Regional School District. It ensures that naming decisions are made thoughtfully, inclusively, and in alignment with the values and mission of the school district. Scope. Any and all interior and exterior spaces of facilities, structures, displays, rooms, areas, and their associated components owned, operated, or controlled by the Air Shirley Regional School District. Policy. The Air Shirley Regional School Committee holds executive authority to designate names for any and all interior and exterior spaces, facilities, structures, displays, rooms, areas, and their associated components owned, operated, or controlled by the Air Shirley Regional School District. The committee is dedicated to making naming decisions that honor individual contributions and uphold the dignity of our educational community. Naming facilities and structures play a vital role in. If I touch it again, I feel like I'm gonna kill it.
Scroll it.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Teamwork.
Thank you. Naming facilities and structures play a vital role in shaping community identity and pride. The Air Shirley Regional School Committee is committed to transparent, respectful, and community-oriented process that recognizes those who have made lasting impacts on education. Names and associated wording must comply with district policies and support the school's mission and vision. Additionally, naming should allow for future flexibility concerning the space's use and function. While the school committee may acknowledge notable financial contributions through naming rights, it will not solely base naming decisions on monetary factors. Philanthropic support is encouraged and may lead to designations within the district's facilities. In cases of replacing existing facilities, priority will be given to the names of the structures being replaced pending reaffirmation by the school committee. Criteria for naming recognition. The criteria for naming individuals and acknowledgement of their contributions to, there should be a the there,
You're good.
Okay, never mind, sorry, okay, good, thanks guys. ASRSD aim to celebrate those who have made a significant impact on our educational community. A nominee can be either living or deceased if the nominee has passed away or represented the ASRSD community through employment, volunteer work, or an elected position. They become eligible for naming 5 years after their death or the end of their representation. They must also meet one of the following criteria: substantial contributions, such as dedicated service to youth in public schools, consistent efforts to maintain quality public education system for all youth while striving to enhance programs and services, or demonstrating understanding of the essential nature of public education in the perpetuation of our democratic form of government. The second option is embodiment of excellent attributes related to mission, vision, or citizenship of ASRSD community, including exceptional performance in supporting public schools. Active, that actually, instead of active citizenship, it's supposed to say effective citizenship. Community service, and a reputation for excellent character and high ethical standards. You can go ahead. Procedure, we're almost done, I promise. I do not like to read this much publicly. Procedure, request for naming ASRSD facility. First, a written explanation outlining the specific structure and reasons why it should be dedicated to a particular nominee should be submitted to the school committee chair and superintendent. The school committee chair and/or superintendent will meet with the individual or individuals making the request. The request will be placed on the next school committee meeting agenda. At the school committee meeting, the school committee will meet with the petitioners to listen to their explanation concerning the dedication request and take the request under advisement for a period of at least 60 days. The school committee will then take action on the request at a regularly scheduled meeting, applying the selection criteria previously listed in the policy. Next is the naming suggestion procedure. The school committee will announce its intent to name a facility at a regular meeting. The superintendent will distribute news releases inviting community suggestion and mechanisms to submit suggestions. Did you do it? Sorry, thank you. I just did that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I did, so 3. At the following regular meeting, the superintendent will present a list of suggested names along with recommendations for consideration. The official naming will occur at the second regular meeting following the initial announcement. Done.
Give that girl a star.
Or a drink.
Do that later.
I meant Sprite, Joyce. All right, questions, comments, Jim?
All right, first, I didn't have any issues with the first page, except it just named everything, and sometimes we do get some gifts like the bench at Laurier White, somebody donates, it goes in and it just has it carved in there, and it's like, this would say that no matter what it is, we have to decide and we have to follow some sort of procedure. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's a thing that we haven't done before.
Right.
So we'd have to figure our way
The
around it.
rotary bench at Page Hilltop.
Exactly,
Yes.
right. When it gets to the second page, in case of replacing existing facilities, we've done it, I mean, we're kind of all over the map anyway, which is probably why we're talking about this, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good idea. So we had a number of meetings when they wanted to rename this the Don Parker,
Yep.
right? Even though it was a Don Parker place before, when it was an open quad, we went through, George Frost was here, and we had a series of meetings. We sort of figured out a way to do that. I don't think we had a real policy, but everybody came to agreement without any issues. We just renovated built a new field facility, and there really wasn't any discussion, nor did I think there should be, on whether you would keep Harold Norton. If Rob Norton weren't involved, would it still be the Harold Norton Field Assembly? I don't know, but it never really came up to the fact that, hey, we should name the new grounds here the Harold Norton. We've got the big stone there with his whole bio and everything, and it's a huge addition, but that never really came before us. It just sort of ended up rolling in there. And I think it's fine that we would come, but that would, the only thing that would change is that process would have come before us. I'm sure it would have passed.
Right.
But that would have come before us. When it came to the Bresnahan track, that went through easily. I mean, for the Run for Education must have, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars it raises every year, and it's, you know, Bresnahan's and Dolan's doing all the dog work, so, I mean, that's easy. But there are other names too. You have, when I think about the field area, from back, you know, after me, Joe Morris, who the record in Massachusetts for the 100 is Joe Morris's 10.83 is still the record. It's from 1983 and it's still the state record. He also broke all of Jim Brown's records at Syracuse University. He also has a Super Bowl ring with the New York Giants. He also paid for the lighting on the football field. That's why we had Friday night lights for all that sort of stuff. So that would be a name that might have come up for something that happened out in the field area. When I get to substantial contributions, the only thing I changed, kind of a nudge, but our form of government is a Republican form of government. We're not a Democratic form of government. So I changed that. All right. Then I get down to item 3 for procedure. The request will be placed, and I changed it to one of the next 3 meetings, 3 school committee meetings, because sometimes when you guys put stuff together, it's like the next meeting is the budget. You know, it's like we need some latitude to say, you know, because things don't get, especially naming doesn't have to happen in a hurry. So you got to give the chair a chance to say, look, yeah, we're kind of busy the next 2. We'll see you in 7 weeks at this meeting, and then it will come up, and it still sets a timeline. So I said it would be one of the next 3 meetings. And then the naming suggestion procedure, I just biffed that entire thing because it doesn't happen that way. The thing that I really liked in this policy was that it starts out with whoever wants to do it, right? Nobody says, what a great room, we should name it. That doesn't happen. What happens is somebody says, I want to name this for this reason. And the thing I liked about this policy is that that request goes to the superintendent and the chair, right? So then they can sit there and go and do a little bit of homework and probably poll the people on the committee and try to figure out whether is this going to be a good thing for us, or is this going to cause a big mess, or what is going to happen. So I like that. And I think everything that's in that request for naming ASRSD facility leads you far enough down the road and gives you the flexibility for what you want that would allow you to get rid of the naming suggestion procedure. Because it says it's only a suggestion, so we could knock it out anyway. But I think if we just knock it out and follow what's in the procedure here, I think would be good.
Other questions, comments, responses?
For me, there is, as I was reading it, high up on the policy, I think when you're looking in the policy itself, when we have the first explanation of facilities, I forgot to put the parentheses to say facilities so that I can continue to do it throughout the rest of the document without having to list them. I forgot to do that, so that was something that as I was reading I realized, because it's a lot to say.
That'll save us some
Well, it
words.
could still be in there, it doesn't have to be taken out, because it doesn't hurt to reiterate those. So somebody says,
Et cetera.
yeah,
Facilities, et
right,
cetera.
I mean, you don't, it's, to restate some of those things, it's not horrible. Maybe
Okay.
it doesn't read that well when you're trying to read it out loud, but, you know, it doesn't detract from the fact that you keep reissuing what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a couple of thoughts. In some of the, in procedure, bullet number 2, I wonder if you just give the chair a little bit of latitude. I don't know if this is always going to be literal, but it can be the chair or designee. Or,
Yeah.
Like the fields committee, or sometimes
Yeah.
there are other school committee members that may be designated to
Yeah.
be involved. And so
And I wonder if it's communicates with, because sometimes it can be a phone call.
Yeah.
I think meet has a implication of face-to-face.
Yes, it should be.
I-
You have to know who it is.
I think that-
Not for every bench.
I think the naming,
That often. It has to be resolved.
if I have one other thought. The naming suggestion procedure, I think it's good to have, and it says suggested, but I think it certainly gives some direction and guidance, right? That there should be some thought to the procedure as we're looking at naming. So I wouldn't knock it out. I don't think it harms anything, and I think it has some good suggestions to make sure you're giving us some additional thought to the procedure.
Is there, I don't know, I'm curious about the request for additional names, which I know is something that Jonathan had drafted, like that's not a new idea.
When I reviewed Jonathan's documents, the reason why, or at least my takeaway for his reasoning, was because it looked like what they were one of the goals was to have the community-centered approach and to have the inclusivity. That was why they balanced it out with having the naming suggestion. So at the very least, in every instance where naming was a situation, the school we gave ample opportunity, even outside of public comment, for there to be a response. I didn't want to box Adam in, since I listed the superintendent, which is why I said in whatever reporting mechanism or whatever it was I wrote there, because like in my mind he uses surveys a lot, so he may say here's a survey with this list of names, and then the parents are able to vote on it. But who knows, it could change. Maybe it becomes a button in the middle of your room. I don't know. But I just wanted to give him enough latitude. But that was my takeaway from Jonathan's document.
Yeah. And in my mind, I'm like, I appreciate the opportunity. We've got a new building. Let's imagine we build a new elementary school in 30 years.
Well, when we build this preschool.
Sure. And we're going to name it, and we've got some great ideas, and then you say, you have an opportunity to say, hey, community, do you have other ideas, right? So you don't just get here the 5 alumni who know the school committee members or superintendents. There's some risk, obviously, you get the Bodie McBodie face, right? As a joke suggestion that comes in through the survey. And I think, so that's a risk. The reality is it's not that the public is voting on every name.
Right.
So the risk is relatively low. The risk is that we read something ridiculous into the record. But, Tris?
On the procedure on number 2, where it says the school committee chair, I would say, and the superintendent. You shouldn't have one person, you should have 2 people meeting with whoever's doing it. So you have a backup.
It's supposed to be and or, sorry, Joyce.
No, it says and or, but I think
it
it should be
and.
And.
Oh, at
It
least
should be
one
2
member.
Two
and
people,
this- okay.
at least one member and the superintendent.
Okay.
It doesn't have to necessarily be the chair, but a school committee member, preferably the chair, and the superintendent.
Kevin?
One other question I have on scope, and this question's come up very recently. So Mr. Kendall has recently gone to the boosters about continued field advertisement.
Yeah.
Right, and selling advertisement. Does that fall under the purview of this? Because
I think that falls under our we have an advertisement policy, and so again, we can put signs up. It would be if you want to name one of the following spaces, right? So if you want to name a bookshelf in your French class, the Charles de Gaulle bookshelf, that goes through this. But if you want to, have a Verizon wireless sign, maybe given previous conversations, it shouldn't be Verizon, but.
Well, that's a different policy.
Right, that's what I'm saying, it's a
Yes.
different.
But that triggered something.
expansive.
Jim, in the policy where, the portion of the policy where it was, towards the end of the policy section, where we had that, the facilities name, if we were to renovate a facility or whatever. So the reason that I put that in there was in Jonathan's notes, there was a section where he had referenced other policies and reasonings, and I guess it had come up at 1, if not 2 other schools where basically what they did is, I think essentially what you said, they had renovated a facility, and the school committee said, this name is coming up for vote again, do we just want to keep it the same? And everybody kind of said yes. But because it was in there and I was including his notes, that's the only reason that I did it, was just because it was underneath those recommendations from 2020.
Okay.
Which we don't need to keep, but again,
Yeah.
they were the last drafts we were working from. All right.
Not to put you guys on the spot, I was just, thank you, Charlie.
I was just gonna say, I was looking at some other policies, and it seems as though the names of the policies for other districts are different from the name that is being listed on this. So others are writing them as naming district facilities, or naming buildings and grounds. They're
Doesn't have
not
to be
putting
new
the adjective new, they're just, because it seems as though the wording of the policy is more to
Oh, right.
reflect everything,
Yes.
not
Everything.
just
Yeah.
new.
Not just new
It's
facilities.
Yeah.
just naming.
So just strike new?
Strike
Strike
new.
new,
Strike new.
strike new.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, good idea. Good catch.
Naming
Facilities.
Facility.
facilities. Much easier.
I was gonna ask if administration saw anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand. It's 9 o'clock, don't it?
Anything from our admin team in terms of other feedback, comments? Does it feel?
The only thing I may add is we might also want to look at donations. There could be a time when someone is making a donation to the district with a specific name on an item that they're donating. And I wouldn't want to have that tied up. So there could be an exception that if there's someone donating an item with a specific name, that would be, it could be approved during the donation acceptance process.
That's a good idea.
Joyce, you raised your hand and then
Don't you,
groaned.
when you separate necessarily, if that is one of their pre-requirements,
Mhm.
like I'm going to give you $1 million if you name that book over there, right? Then when you accept the donation, you accept that.
Right.
Or do you say that has to be then later designated?
Oh, I think my suggestion is if it is to allow the school or to be able to accept the name during the acceptance of a donation, if there's not an issue with that.
Did you put that in the donation policy?
Yeah,
Because
that,
if somebody wants to
Isn't that the
name,
donation
I
policy?
guess what I'm saying is if someone wants to donate, a wing to the school, but we have to name it after Adolf Hitler, we're probably not going to accept that donation.
Right.
But if they want to name it after their grandfather who was
Dr. Adam
that's never going to happen. But the founder of AIR, that probably wouldn't be an issue.
Right.
And we wouldn't want to
yeah,
complicate someone's generosity at times. So
Right.
there might be a process where during a donation, the school committee could also decide to vote on the name during that process
Or
also.
not to accept it.
Or not to accept it.
Yeah, I think, and we can pull up the donation policy, which is a separate
We
one.
add it, yeah.
Let's see where it is.
And I mean, I think in terms of the procedure, it'd be like you would accept that, either wouldn't accept the gift until you've gone through the sort of naming approval, or you could accept contingent on. There could be a way that you go through, but again, like those could be separate. And it's less likely that it's going to be $1 million for a wing. It's more likely that it's a bench from the Rotary, which again, I don't mean to be really facetious about it, but I do think that they are very similar. And I don't want to go through a 3-month ordeal for a Rotary bench. Great token. Glad we have it there. And again, like it doesn't need 3 months of bureaucracy. So I think it's worth calling that out or recognizing that somehow in here so that we don't add red tape where we don't need it.
I can add that. I can look at it and then see if I can put some verbiage together.
I think that's what Chris said. You don't want it to have to come to us.
Yeah, it didn't come to us, Joyce. I don't think it needs to come to us. It was
Another subject, another
yeah,
day.
yeah, exactly.
Because can be problems with that.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Nothing to do with
I
this.
got it.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with this. All right. It seems like Erica has the note she needs, and recognizing that we are,
Good job, Erica.
yes, much appreciated. We have gone through any topics not reasonably anticipated. All right, communications.
Okay, Thursday, December 5th, Page Hilltop PTO meeting, 6:30 at Page Hilltop. Monday, December 9th, report cards are issued for grades preschool through 8. Tuesday, December 10th, the ASPTO meeting at 7 p.m. at Laura White. Wednesday, December 11th, the Air Shirley Education Foundation meeting, 7 p.m. at the High School Media Center. Thursday, December 12th, and Friday, December 13th, are 2-hour early release, preschool through 5 for conferences. Lunch will be served, dismissal time of 1:15. Tuesday, December 17th, the Page Hilltop Winter Concert, 9:15 a.m. and 6 o'clock p.m., Page Hilltop. Wednesday, December 18th, school committee meeting, 6:30 p.m. at the middle school library. Wednesday, December 18th, special education parent advisory council meeting, 6:30 p.m. at Laura White. And finally, Thursday, December 19th, is the Laura A. White Winter Concert, 9:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m.
Doc, do you have a date for the high school winter concert?
Have it, let's see if we can find that for right now.
Also, if I may, sorry, there is also a middle, I did not update the file in the drive. There's also a middle school band and chorus concert on Thursday, December 12th at 7 p.m. And I'm going to check that. I don't believe that I've received any information.
All right. Do we have need for executive session? All right, with that, I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would give that motion to you, Mr. Chairman, that we adjourn at 8:59. I've got a cell phone advisor here.
Good thing we haven't banned them in school committee. Sorry. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.